In this podcast, Christine Petersen will focus on how our bodies and our minds work and give you various tips and tricks, tools and techniques for understanding yourself, being happier in yourself, and living a better life. Every week, we will discuss different topics that might interest you and help you think differently to then change the way you approach life and yourself. Today, I'm talking with Mason de Chochor, my friend and colleague who shares many of my interests in how our minds and bodies function and how small changes can make a big difference in how we live our lives. So, good afternoon, Mason. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you very much, and I'm very pleased to be here with you.
Thank you, me too. I'm really looking forward to today. It's going to be very, very interesting. Today, we're going to be talking about wellness, finding balance in your life. Now, before we do that, I'd just like to introduce you to our listeners so everybody knows who I'm talking with. I'm talking with Mason de Chochor. Mason lives in Geneva and is Swiss and American. He has been practicing yogi most of his life, and for 14 years he was a yoga teacher. In fact, briefly, you were my yoga teacher in Geneva for some months. You were educated at Oxford University and HEC Paris as a change management consultant and coach after receiving an undergraduate university degree in both philosophy and in economics. Mason has joined many retreats and ashrams all over the world. At the same time, he has been a successful portfolio manager and held senior positions at Swiss private banks. Mason, the reason I'm talking to Mason today is that he has achieved a remarkable work-life balance between the worlds of finance and wellness. At the same time, he has had to overcome a fair share of hardship. Recently, he lost his wife to cancer, and early on in his career, he survived a difficult burnout. He has a lot to share with us, due to both his knowledge and his experience. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say today, Mason. So let's talk about wellness. Mason, what does it mean to you, and what is your approach to it?
Okay. Yeah, wellness is somewhat of a new concept, but being well is not. It used to be that one was well if one was not sick. Very simple. When one was not ill. Now wellness is a concept, and even the WHO, the World Health Organization, has gotten involved and defines wellness as a state of complete physical, mental, even social well-being. Which is not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So if we're defining wellness as an optimal state of health, I would say this begs two questions. One is, what does optimal signify? Is it something which can be defined collectively or individually? And secondly, how does one achieve such a state? And if one does achieve this state of optimal health, how does one sustain it? So I guess to the first question, I believe that, of course, there are objective, traditional medical measures which define the physical parameters of being in good health, blood pressure, temperature, and so on. However, really, there are also subjective parameters. Every individual has its own sense of well-being. And then secondly, the body has a natural tendency to achieve a state of homeostasis, which is a state of balance. Homeostasis refers to the body and organism's ability to regulate various physiological processes in order to keep internal states steady and balanced. So we have nature on our side. But how can we help nature? Can we help nature? Yes, I'm sure we can. And it's not just Western medicine which treats symptoms of illness, but even through preventive measures, which are largely Eastern and energetic. So Western medicine really treats physical symptoms and and deals with physical symptoms, whereas Eastern medicine believes that the physical body is only part of whom we are. And there's this belief that we are governed by energies which circulate through our bodies through channels. The Chinese call them meridians, the Indians call them nadis. They're energy channels. And the idea is that these energy channels, if they become blocked, then because of the blockage, one becomes unbalanced. And the blockage itself will lead to a physical manifestation of illness. So that clearly, Eastern medicine is very concerned with prevention of illness by maintaining balance and by maintaining energetic balance. So if, therefore, we keep energy channels open and energy circulating, it is the key for remaining healthy.
That is really, really interesting. I like what you were saying about the fact that the Western medicine and Eastern medicine or beliefs are so diametrically opposite. The fact that in the West, also, I think we were talking earlier that doctors in the West will treat you when you're ill, whereas doctors in the East will make sure you stay well.
That's quite true. It used to be when you, in China, when you saw a doctor, you paid him the way you would pay an insurance policy, an insurance premium. You paid him as long as you were healthy, well. When you felt ill, you stopped paying him.
Yeah.
So, prevention, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, as they say.
Absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely. So how can one keep these energy channels open and the energy circulating in a balanced way?
Well, in Eastern traditions of practice and exercise, there's meditative awareness that do just that. And this is the case with Tai Chi or Qigong or yoga. And then with the help of practitioners, you have people who administer shiatsu, acupuncture, reflexology, Reiki, etc.
Okay, interesting. And now I hear that, and as I know, one of the better known and most popular practices is yoga. And as I said before, you've been a practitioner and a teacher for many, many years. Tell us how you think that yoga contributes to wellness.
Well, yoga very often is only thought of in terms of gymnastics, postures, remaining supple. In fact, yoga is considered in Sanskrit to be Ashtanga. In other words, it has 8 limbs. But most people only know about the postures, which in Sanskrit are called asanas. And it's hatha yoga, physical yoga, hatha meaning moon, sun yoga. But even when it comes to postures, actually, if they're performed in a very yogic fashion and they're not merely gymnastic, they're performed paying attention to, on the one hand, physical press points, yes, but also energetic extensions, which are not just supple extensions, and meditative awareness. And the latter two are energetic components. Now, in yoga, there are, because it's Ashtanga, there are 7 other limbs to the asanas, to the physical postures, because Ashtanga is 8 limbs. And so there are the yamas and niyamas, the abstinences and the observances. Those are sort of the 10 commandments of yoga. Then there's pranayama. Prana is vital energy. Yama is both extension and control, breath control. Then there's pratyahara, which is withdrawing the senses. When you are involved in listening to your body, you're listening internally. Dharana, which is concentration. Dharana can be something visual. It could be a mantra. It could be a sound. It could be music, and so on. It's concentration. And then there's dhyana, which is meditation, which meditative awareness accompanies all the limbs of yoga. And yoga, if one takes it to its nth degree, you are absorbed into an understanding of the greater picture, samadhi.
So without going into all the components of yoga, do you think that yoga is only a preventative measure with regard to wellness? Or do you think it can also help when physical symptoms occur, which appear to require Western medicine?
Yes, that's a key question. Now, um, uh, you say only a preventative measure. Actually, if it really is a preventative measure, that'll put a lot of doctors out of business. It's already be wonderful.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, without a doubt, yoga is understood to promote, sustain good health in the sense of wellness, which is acting to prevent disease and so on. But let me recount an experience of mine which convinced me that it can even be applied successfully to manifested physical problems. Um, Over 20 years ago, I had taken time to have a excursion, walking excursion on foot in the Salève, which are mountains in neighboring France here. And I was coming down towards the end of the day, and towards the bottom, going towards my car, I felt and even heard a pop. I realized that was not good. There was a sharp pain in my right knee, but I tried to ignore it. Went home, went to bed, and the next morning I could barely walk. It really hurt, and it hurt for quite some time. So I went to see a sports doctor, and the sports doctor, who was not a surgeon, but he's a good sports doctor, took several X-rays and said, "Okay, you have a torn meniscus. This can happen. This does happen." And I said, "What do I do?" He said, "Well, it's a torn lateral meniscus. It does contribute to stability in the knee, but you've got anterior cruxus and everything else, and what you will need is probably to undergo keel surgery because these things can't be repaired, but they will cut out the torn piece." And I said, "Okay, fine. Make an appointment for me with an orthopedic surgeon." And so he said, "Yeah, there's a very good one, but you can't see him immediately. It's going to take about 2 to 3 months." So he made an appointment for me 2.5 months hence. And I went away thinking, I hope I can do something about this without needing surgery. But it was painful. Every step was painful. I then thought to myself, after all, I'm a yogi. I believe in being able to connect to your body and the mind-body connection. And so I decided to meditate on it. And there I would sit, and my dharana, my concentration was on my knee. I knew that I was sitting, and my intention was to communicate with my knee and my meniscus. So I sat, and initially not much happened. My mind was jumping about from subject to subject, but not doing anything that was focusing specifically on my knee. And by about the third session in the evening, something did happen. I suddenly became very still, and I had a lucid vision, a lucid dream. I saw myself sort of dressed in white, walking down a hospital corridor. And at the end of the corridor, I could hear this woman hysterical, screaming in my mind, of course, "Help, help, someone help me, help me." So I walked down the hallway, and on the left, there was a room, and there was this woman in a bed. It was an old-fashioned hospital bed. At the foot of the bed, there was a chart. And I sort of intuited from the chart that she'd been admitted to the hospital about the same time that I had my problem with my meniscus. So then it became obvious to me that she was representing my meniscus, a bit like Freud used to talk about plastic word representation, when physical objects are being, when senses or feelings are being represented by physical objects. There she was, a woman representing my meniscus. So I began to talk to her in my mind, telling her that, "Madam, as long as you're hysterical, as long as you're really upset, we can't help you. We can't treat you. You have to calm down. You're in the right place. You're being cared for. You're in a hospital." And I would go back subsequent evenings to this image, call up this image and talk to her, and then become more specific in terms of talking to my meniscus. And basically telling my meniscus, I'm behind you, I'm backing you, but you're on the spot. You know about healing in your particular area. If there's anything you can do, please do it, and I will back you up, or please communicate to me what can be done. And I felt confident. And sure enough, the pain subsided and disappeared completely. A good month and a half before I was supposed to see the surgeon, there was no pain whatsoever.
Wow.
So when I finally did see the surgeon and brought all my x-rays and asked if I needed an IRM or something, he looked at them and said, no, but I'm very intrigued. This is a pretty bad tear. You're not that young anymore. You're walking normally. You have no pain. And I explained, no. I explained what I did. He said, look, I can't comment on that. All I know is whatever you did seems to be working. Are you limber? What can you do? I could bend my knees. I could sit cross-legged and so on. And he said, but you're not. I said, no, I'm not jogging. I'm not running. I'm not doing anything which is an impact sport, which would hurt it. But I am bicycling and I'm walking and I'm practicing yoga. So he said, well, congratulations. I said, well, I don't really want to be operated. He said, no, I want to operate you. You don't need to be operated, but it could happen that maybe a torn piece will one day come up and bother you or block you. But if you're not jogging, that's not likely to happen. And anyway, if I were to operate, I'd have to cut out virtually the whole meniscus, which would mean that you'll be vulnerable in the future to arthrosis, which is bone friction. And if that happens, which it can happen under the circumstances, then probably you're facing some point in the future the need for a prosthetic knee, a prosthetic limb. So I said, okay, fine, thank you. He bid me well, and we said goodbye. And I haven't seen an orthopedic surgeon since, and I'm fine. So that is my story, and it did teach me a lesson about meditation and internal communication.
That is quite remarkable. How many years ago is this now?
Oh, over 20. I don't know, maybe
Wow.
25, something like that.
Wow, yeah. Remarkable. So tell us, Mason, how do you think others can apply this? What's the takeaway here?
Well, if I've been able to do that, others can certainly do it. Biochemistry tells us that cell surfaces can see, hear, feel, interpret messages that come to them in chemical form, of course. And our cells' membranes have a form of intelligence and the ability to make decisions about how they will function. And that these proteins then control and regulate functions of the body. Now, we know that meditation can influence our body chemistry. So if you put 2 and 2 together, and my experience is really an example of that. If by a meditation and internal focus, the body chemistry can be altered and boosted in such a way that chemical functions can help the body to mend itself, even when there's an ailment, then we have a methodology which all of us can use via meditation and meditative awareness to heal.
That is remarkable. And what a wonderful way to heal, in fact, using our body's resources, our natural body chemistry on this.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Mason, if there's one final thought on our talk today, what would the takeaway be? What would the takeaway be for the audience listening?
That if you listen to your body, if you practice meditative awareness in terms of your sense of being, and with positive thinking, you establish well-being, we will not have the problems or as many problems as we seem to be encountering otherwise.
So basically, it's this meditation and the yoga, the different yoga areas are will help us find balance in our lives and our bodies.
Yes. You know, Christine, because of homeostasis, because nature naturally will help us remain balanced if we attune to it, if we tune into ourselves. Yoga is just one practice, but if we tune into ourselves with what I would call meditative awareness, then what we're doing is we're allowing nature to work with us in our favor.
Mm.
If we tune out, if we ignore our sense of well-being, if we get so caught up in the rat race and the outside world, then there are going to be problems that we could otherwise avoid.
Mm. Very, very interesting. Thank you very much, Mason. Thank you for today, and we'll talk again another time.
Pleasure.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode. You've been listening to A Toolkit for a Better Life, produced by Christine Petersen. For more information and details on how to contact us, please see the podcast description.